thank you so much for tuning back in to Ace of Hearts, a podcast for alloromantic asexuals. This is episode 4, and I saw that we're really close to 50 Spotify followers, so thank you so much for following on Spotify, for subscribing on YouTube, following on Apple Podcasts, just wherever you tune in from. It's really nice to see that kind of engagement, and I'm just really glad that you guys are enjoying the podcast because I enjoy doing it. So I wanted to jump right into a question for my alloromantic aces. How many of you guys already have day trips, date trips planned in your mind? Do you guys ever daydream about where you would take a partner and where you'd take them to eat and where you'd take them to hike afterwards and just have all these cute little dates planned in your mind? Because I'm so full of love. I literally have all my favorite places to hike and eat and just go look in different stores, and I have just whole days planned out. So I want to know how many of y'all also do that, kind of daydreaming. And it just makes you really excited. I can't wait to have my first partner because I used to get really down on myself, and it makes me feel better to see that other people felt this way too. Especially I see in all the ace Facebook groups and different places, I'm not happy that other people were down on themselves, but it definitely made me feel a lot less alone. I was oh my God, I haven't had a relationship yet. I try, do people just think I'm ugly? And that used to be me a couple years ago, but now I'm in the mindset of just one day. I'll have a love of my own one day, and I put in the effort, and so we'll see what happens from there. You can't control other people. Obviously, you can control is how much you try, and if you're putting in effort, you'll attract a really great person who'll want to go on these adventures and day trips with you. And I think the thing that changed for me was realizing that I was ace and embracing that, and not ever feeling you have to feel bad about yourself or feel like a burden. It's for what I lack in sexual attraction, it comes back in romantic attraction times 250%. I'm gonna come steal you from your place and take you on a beautiful day trip, take you out to eat, buy you some chocolates or flowers, take you to the most beautiful hiking spot you've ever seen, but it's a secret because it's my secret little spot, and then bring you home and let you put on your favorite movie and cuddle. So if that all sounds appealing to you, call 1-800. No, I'm kidding. Feeling such a heightened sense of romance and love is such a wonderful thing, and it just baffles me how many people are oh, you're asexual, so you must have zero interest in dating. And I'm no, for me personally, I have zero interest in sex. Why would that affect dating for me unless I explicitly tell you hey, I'm aromantic also? Nah, dude, I'm asexual, but I'm like I said in the TikTok, I'll steal your guy, your girl, your NB, and I'll take them on the greatest date of their life. So you better watch out about talking shiz about asexual people. But anyway, like I said last week, I was going to go into the different apps. I think I went over the advantages and disadvantages of dating apps in general, but I wanted to go over each of the apps, and I was I crash test dummy tried these, all of them so that you don't have to, for better or for worse. I did give it my all, but I'll give you my opinions on those right now. So before we get into it, I just want to clarify again that I am a alloromantic sexual pulsed asexual. So, my views are my own, and kind of my experience with these apps may not be the most helpful if you're somewhere on the aro spectrum or you're sex favorable. So just want to clarify that. But I hope this can be helpful to some people. Because trying all these out was really exhausting. So I really want to save you guys the trouble, and I want to give you guys a smoother journey than I had. So before we go into which app is going to be right for you, I would really advise you to think about a couple things, because if you don't think about them before jumping into the dating pool, they could end up biting you. Number one would be, what do you want? Do you want a relationship? And if so, what would you want out of it? Do you want something short-term, no strings attached, long-term, polyamorous, monogamous? And number two, depending on what type of ace person you are, little to no sex, what are you comfortable with? What aren't you? Do you have the confidence that you'll be able to clearly communicate that to a partner or in a situation where you're under a lot of pressure? I'm hoping that none of us end up in unsafe situations, but just be prepared and make sure that you're able to clearly communicate what you're comfortable with and what you're not. Like, you have to be able to stand up for yourself, and this doesn't just apply to asexuality. This is for anything. You have to be able to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who won't respect that, but there are more who will, I like to think. But just beware, just be careful in any situation, advocate for yourself. And number 3 for me would just be really, really think about the things that you don't like. Be ready to catch those and communicate that you don't like it. I see a lot of people in different ace forms saying like, oh, my partner like makes like sexual jokes and they kind of make me uncomfortable and da 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 da. And so, it's better, at least from my perspective, to nip that in the bud like at the very beginning, because the more you start to let stuff slide, unfortunately, other people might think that it's okay or think that you're comfortable with it. And it's just like, I know it's really hard to communicate when you're unhappy with someone's actions. Like, when people hear communication, they think, oh, great, I can communicate like, hey, I liked what you said the other day and this and this and that. But, communication is about communicating the things you don't like also. And you have to be able to say that so that no resentment builds. Because if you are upset about something and you don't tell the other person, they're not a mind reader, and you can't really expect them to know that you're upset unless you tell them. And if you don't tell them and then you're mad at them for this thing that they don't even know you're upset about, resentment builds, and we don't want that. So, for instance, if you don't like when people are infrequent texters or something, be ready to tell them that. And I know it's scary, but dialogue and communication will never scare off a true connection. And obviously, I know that y'all will be careful about the way you say it. You won't be like, I hate you and you're really fucking annoying for doing this thing that upset me. I know y'all are not going to say it like that. I know that you're going to be like, hey, just so you know, this and this upsets me, and I would appreciate if you could do this and this, let me know, we can talk about it. So, just be ready, really ready to catch the things that you don't like. I think it's easy, and I'm guilty of it. When I first stepped in the dating world, I was so kind of intent on like, wow, this is like my first step into the dating world. I don't want to be too picky. I don't want to be too nitpicky. Well, guess what? It's your life. It's your dates. It's all your choices. Be quote unquote picky, look out for number 1. Take care of yourself. Like, don't let things slide if you're not cool with it. I know it's really easy. Trust me. It's really easy to let things slide under the guise of like, I don't want to be too picky. And, don't ever think like, oh, I'm already on thin ice for being asexual. Like, I don't want to like, tell this person, hey, like you're doing this thing that upsets me. Like I said, dialogue and communications that will never scare true connections away. If they are offended, they have a right to feel how they feel, but it kind of will tell you like, okay, this isn't like a long-term connection. So essentially, this isn't ace exclusive. Obviously, we're really special, but really give these 3 things a lot of thought, and it's totally okay to not know like the answers to those questions and kind of figure them out, even if you don't know the answers, you shouldn't really let that stop you. Just be actively thinking about them. So just be aware there are some people out there who will try to use your quote unquote, I don't knows against you and try and use it to manipulate you. Not everyone's like that. And like I said, there's much more of a surplus of good people, but just be aware that if you're saying like, oh, I don't know, or I'm undecided on this, some people might try to decide things for you. So don't let them. Advocate for yourself. You are ace, you are beautiful inside and out, and you are enough. So go into this being sure of yourself and what you want. I'm right beside you. I'm holding your hand. I am also bumbling through this journey and just kind of like spewing things out into the microphone. And I'm just hoping that we can all do this together. And like I said, we're in that digital clubhouse. We're all spilling the tea on our experiences and hopefully just making it easier for the people after us. All right, so first you're going to choose the app that's right for you. And like I said before, I've tested out many apps, but the one that I've come to like the most is Hinge, because Hinge has the option, number 1, to select asexual when you're creating an account. So it will display it on your profile, with your age, gender, etc. So I've also tried out Tammy, which is a renowned LGBTQIA+ app. but unfortunately, it lets people message you before you've matched or like liked each other. And I don't know if the app has like changed since then, like since I was on it, but it was just kind of a lot being bombarded by messages. Whereas on Hinge, you have to match with a person first before you can talk. And additionally, you're able to send them voice memos, but not pictures on Hinge. So you're safe from unsolicited nudes. But yeah, Tammy, I think the idea is great. I just didn't really like how many people could like, it was overstimulation to the max. It was like, this person liked you, this person, here's a message, and you have these people messaging you, and then, you're feeling obligated to respond or something. It was just a lot. So if it's changed since then, I would probably give it another chance, but that's just my personal experience with it. I think Bumble would come in second place for me. I believe I've seen it advertised as the app where women make the first move. But it's also known for matches expiring if no one talks after the first 24 hours. And I don't really like platforms that are just swipe left and right, as, it's just kind of placing emphasis on how somebody looks. Because, like, yeah, you can scroll to read the person's interests, but I still feel like you get a lot of people just, like, speed swiping. And that doesn't work for ace people, because you need to scroll down and read that I'm ace. So for that reason, I also don't like Tinder, just because it's like that left-right, and people just kind of judge you based on your first photo and may not read. Obviously, it has a reputation for being known as a hookup app, but I think, like, people just know it as a dating app in general. I just, I don't like anything that makes you judge really quickly based on a photo. For a lot of people, obviously the initial attraction has to be there, and that's fine. I'm not judging you for that. But if you're pan, you're going to be scrolling past their photo, like, entirely and reading their entire bio. So those were the mainstream apps, and I know that you're all asking, all right, so what about the ace apps? The two that I've tried were Asexual Cupid and asexuals.net. And I think these apps and websites are great. But again, the whole messaging before you match with somebody just puts me off. It's just kind of overwhelming. And additionally, a few of these are international. And while that's amazing, there are a lot of people who seek an in-person connection. And, if you're like me and you love cuddling, you aren't really that open to long-distance relationships, like, at the forefront. I think for me, like, I'd need to be in an in-person relationship with somebody for, like, more than a year to consider, like, a long distance. But for me personally, like, I couldn't start something off long distance if there was, like, no meeting in the foreseeable future. So that's something I like about apps like Hinge, just being able to set a radius, saying, like, show me people within 25 miles of me. So depending on what type of relationship you're seeking, if you're okay with a long distance one or you're looking for one more in person, those ones could work great too. And again, some of these apps could have changed since I've used them, though. Because like I said, I'm a fan of Hinge, so that's the one that I kind of keep going back to. Additionally, I also want to say that I am not personally opposed to dating someone who's allosexual. If you're an ace person and you're looking for solely other ace people, I think that these ace apps would be the best bet. But I also wouldn't discourage you from Hinge or Bumble, because I've seen and matched with a lot of other asexual people on all spots of the spectrum. So in the same vein, I want to talk about something that kind of, like, frustrates me, and I wanted to know if y'all have, like, gotten this type of reaction before. But, like, if you're an ace and you're on, the mainstream dating apps and you're talking about that, do you ever get, like, people, mostly allo people, being like, oh, why are you on these apps? Like, isn't there, like, an app, like an asexual app for your kind? It's like, number one, I'm okay. I'm open to dating allo people. Like, yes, ideally, I would want a partner to be ace, but, like, I'm open to dating allo people. But the reason that this upsets me, even if someone, is meaning well, it's just, like, just because someone is ace doesn't mean we'll vibe. I'm pan-romantic, and I really fall in love with people's spirits, and that doesn't have anything to do with their sexuality. And, I could match with an ace person, but that doesn't stop them from being a complete asshole. That doesn't stop them from being a bad communicator or having radically different opinions than me. I don't want the only thing we have in common to be our sexuality. And, like, yes, it's important to find somebody who's on the same page as that. Like, I'm never going to debate that. Like, it's easier, probably to date somebody else who's on the ace spectrum. But again, that also doesn't solidify anything, because like I could match with another ace person on an ace app and they could say like, I'm really touch averse and I would never want to cuddle. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm super, super cuddly and always want to cuddle. So it's like, even within those apps, you know, there's still so many variables that doesn't work. And so to just boil it down to like, aha, I have an idea. Go on an ace app and find another ace person. It's just kind of an ignorant viewpoint to me. I know it's meant well most of the time, but like, to me, that's like telling, you know, a straight person like, oh my God, great idea. You should date another straight person. You know, they'd be like, well, we'd have to have the same views. Like, what if they're super conservative and I'm super liberal? Like, what if they're a cat person and I'm a dog person? You know, like, that's how it sounds to me. You know, it's like telling me like, oh, you should date another person with green eyes because you have green eyes. You know, it's just my sexuality. And, you know, it's very important, obviously, that someone respects my sexuality and aligns with it. And, you know, possibly there's a greater chance that they may respect it if they're ace also. But it's like, it's not the only thing that I need to have in common with someone. That's like the part that I don't understand. People just act like, oh, you know, get on the ace apps and find the love of your life. If you find somebody else that's ace, you know, they'll be your perfect match. Because like I said, there's so many variables even within the ace spectrum. And then there's also like, you know, what if we don't vibe? Like, we need to vibe. You know, so it isn't to say that sexuality's aligning isn't important. Like, it is, but that's like not the deal breaker. You know, to some it is, but to each their own. I just like, I know that people mean well when they say that, but it kind of irks me sometimes when people are like, oh, why are you on Hinge? Why are you not on an asexual app? I'm like, because they don't need to just be asexual. They have to be cool. They have to be caring. They have to be communicative. They have to be all these things, you know? So, anyway, depending on your own relationship with yourself and with asexuality, this advice may be better suited for pan-romantic aces who are open to dating alloace. But for people out there who are listening, just don't say that to me, because you'll get that entire spiel. So once you've chosen the app that's right for you, you know, whether that's one of the mainstream apps or one of the ace-exclusive apps, you want to be very clear about your asexuality from the get-go. You know, this part was hard for me because it definitely limits the number of matches you get, but you're also steering away from people who won't be compatible with you anyway. You know, it's better to let people know from the get-go. I always have asexual in my bio, and then I always welcome people to ask me about it and learn more about like where I sit on the spectrum, because I used to, when I first joined the apps, I thought that I would be more appealing if I put demisexual, because then at least there was like a chance, you know. And I'm gonna be real with you guys, like I, you know, was super sex repulsed, but I was like, oh, nobody's gonna match with me if I put asexual. If I put demisexual, you know, it kind of tiptoes around it where they know I'm like on the asexual spectrum, but they're not, you know, they're not gonna like not match with me because there is a chance, and I seem more appealing if I, you know. So I just, you know, I used to do that where I was just like, if I put asexual, nobody's gonna like match with me. And that's not true. You know, if I had started out with just asexual, I would have seen that people still want to love you just the way you are. People still want to take you on dates. People want to buy you dinner, take you out to the movies, you know, like it's really easy to want to dance around it, to maybe want to not put it on there whatsoever. I think I started probably with just like pansexual because they didn't have an option for just pan-romantic. So like, obviously, you know, put pansexual, and then had to bring asexuality into the conversation later. And for a lot of people, that doesn't work for them. And so I will tell you, it is such a time saver, and it helps you spot the people who are willing to learn about asexuality if they didn't already know about it. It helps you spot other ace people. You know, do you know how amazing it is to come across other ace people in the apps and be like, hey, what's up? You know, like, I know that it's scary, trust me, but it's so worth it. It feels very freeing just to have it. Like, I'm asexual, take it or leave it, because I am who I am. I'm not going to change for you. And, you know, I look back at like how nervous I was and how I put demi, and even knowing that I wasn't demi, knowing that I was like fully sex repulsed, like I look back at that experience and like I feel like I was you know, not only not being true to like the other people who came across my profile, but not being true to myself and disrespecting myself in that way by being like, oh, I am less than if I like put like I'm fully, completely asexual, which most people looking at that word, they don't know the whole spectrum. They don't know that demisexuality falls under asexuality. But most people, when looking at the word, just like think like, oh, no sex, They don't realize that it's about attraction. They see that word and they just like are like, oh, okay, I don't really know what that means. And then the ones who think they know what it means go, oh, it means no sex. And it's like, educate yourself. But no, when you have it in your bio, people, you get the people that, number one, may also be ace, which is great. I love finding other ace baddies in the app. But you also get people who are willing to learn or already know a little bit about it. So I really encourage you to just put whatever you are. If you want to start out with like a label that feels more comfortable, then I'm not going to stop you from that, but I will say it's so freeing to just put who you are, what you are, and just let people love you just the way you are. So having asexual in your bio, it can be really exhausting to constantly be the human PowerPoint. So if someone asks you the generic questions, just send them over to our YouTube at Tracy Short Film. And, we have an Asexuality 101 playlist. It doesn't cover everything, but it kind of covers the basics for somebody who has never heard of asexuality, which unfortunately is a good chunk of people. And I want to clarify, you should always obviously be answering questions about your own asexuality personally, instead of letting the video do the work, since no one's experience is going to be quite the same. But I feel like it's a nice way to just catch people up on like what it is. And then you can go into like, personally, for me, I'm a sex repulsed ace, but I'm not touch averse and, all these other things. And so some people may want to explain their place on the spectrum right in their bio or discuss it privately with their matches. I want to remind you guys there's no right or wrong way to do this. I'm just trying to give you guys the least annoying way to do this because it can be a scary road. But I think either way is great as long as you're honest and straightforward and not letting people mess with your digital boundaries. And so again, I like to have mine in the app saying asexual. Don't be afraid of it, warding off people. Be very excited for the other aces that it will attract. So now, once you've matched with someone, just let the conversation flow, ask questions, get to know them, answer questions, just be yourself. But a main point that I want to make is that you would really definitely want to double check that this person has read your bio. You would be surprised at how many people don't read it, even after you've matched. A simple, I just want to double check that you saw the part of my bio that says I'm asexual and make sure you know what that means, goes a long way. You can take it from there. You can tell them about what asexuality is to you personally, after they understand it as a whole, and just, make sure that they know. For those of you who are newer or haven't been on the apps yet or are new to the apps or just the dating world in general, a couple things can happen. People may unmatch you, which is okay. It means that the connection was not going to work for either of you. People may also politely say, hey, that doesn't work for me, but I wish you well, and unmatch, and that's okay too. It's important that people on the other end of the line know themselves and their aspects of a relationship as much as you know yours. So I would encourage you to not be offended or take it personally, when somebody else does treasure sex in a relationship or needs that as part of their life, that's okay. We don't judge them the same way we don't want to be judged for being ace. I'm not going to judge somebody for being allo unless they are rude to me about it. So that being said, people may follow up with really poorly worded questions, such as, what made you this way? What made you asexual? And, oh, well, do you masturbate? It's important to recognize that they may mean well and be curious, but the way that they ask these questions denote a lack of emotional intelligence in this area. Like, I would never ask an allo person, what made you allo? Or things like, there's just, I feel like you can tell a lot about a person from the way they ask a question. So again, like understanding like they're probably not trying to be rude, but this is also showing me that they're not really great in this area. So I would encourage them to think like, would I want to answer this question? How would I feel if this question was asked for me? And that just goes for everything. If you're thinking about asking an interesting question, substitute asexual or ace for whatever sexuality or whatever aspect of sexuality you are, and then kind of think, would I want to have to answer this? So I want to clarify, you are in control of what you want to answer or not. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to. If a question makes you uncomfortable, you get the right to say that. Don't be shy about that. Be like, I don't want to answer that, And the person may go, oh, I'm so sorry, or, oh, okay, So, some ace people are very open to answering all sorts of questions, but a lot of us can find it extremely invasive. I think it's just like a case-by-case basis where if you feel the vibe and the connection is good, the person is maybe just not educated that well about asexuality and may not understand that nothing made you ace any more than something makes you gay or bi or pan or anything, then you can steer them in the right direction. Whereas the latter question is honestly pretty rude. And, as aces, we don't go up to allo people asking them that on the street, but people seem to think it's more acceptable behind a digital veil. So I would just be careful with questions as personal as those ones. And again, trust your gut to judge whether the person is just curious and it's poorly worded, or they're getting way too personal way too fast. So now, to all my ace babies, all my acelings, ace people everywhere, regardless of gender, age, anything, listen carefully. If the person that you are talking to chooses to respond with anything along the lines of, I can change your mind, or how do you know if you haven't tried, or anything that in the slightest invalidates asexuality, unmatch immediately. That is not a good connection. If someone right off the bat is not seeing asexuality as a valid orientation and they're trying to change your mind or manipulate you in any way, please unmatch them, because it is not headed anywhere good. This is foreshadowing, this is showing you what they think of asexuality and that they don't respect it. And there's no use in trying to foster a good connection there. You may want, your first instinct is going to be to educate them. But just know in the back of your mind, if somebody is thinking about asexuality that way, how are they going to treat you? So I see so many people afraid to come off as rude or, really want to give the person a chance. So just keep yourself safe. Do not let your boundaries get crossed. I know it's hard to uphold boundaries. I know the feeling. I know feeling obligated to be nice and give people grace, but you have to remember this is just another person on an app that is looking for a connection just like you, and they'll be okay. All right? Don't feel bad about unmatching. Don't feel bad about being like, hey, that was really rude and I didn't like that and I don't want to talk to you. Please remember to uphold your boundaries. It is so easy to feel like you have to be polite all the time or have to just roll with things, or be like, oh man, but I really liked our conversation before that. Maybe I can, trust your gut and just protect your boundaries. I want you guys to all stay safe, okay? So lastly, if they respond with, okay, I understand, and I want to know more, then keep the convo going. I usually feel apprehensive about reintroducing asexuality into the conversation, thinking, if they didn't see that on my profile initially, this is where they're going to unmatch me. You'd be surprised how many people are open to learning more or say, okay, cool, that's okay with me. It takes all the pressure off your chest, wondering when you have to say something or how they will react. And the sooner you both understand each other's wants, needs, and boundaries, the better. It's up to each person to communicate those. So now that your match has been made aware of asexuality and what it is, or if they're ace, if they're an ace match, they've been made aware of your specific brand of asexuality, make sure you both communicate your needs and wants and boundaries in a relationship. I really want to stress that for this part, it does not just go for matching with allo people. Like I said earlier, you could be a really cuddly ace and match with a touch-averse ace. You could be somebody who is extremely sex repulsed and match with somebody who's sex favorable. You could be demi and match with a gray ace person. And, just because the other person is under the ace umbrella, you still need to communicate about what you both will want and need, And this also isn't just exclusive to ace people. Ace or allo, you both need to talk about things. Ask your match what they value most in a relationship and what they liked about their previous ones, just as they may be asking you what you value and how you express intimacy as an ace person. I appreciate dating apps because you get to know someone's thoughts on something without immediately being put in that situation, face to face, and trying to figure it out in the moment. What is a green flag? What is a deal breaker? All these things are going to help you decide if the person you're talking to respects your asexuality, including other aces. So something to keep in mind is that all different people have all different values in a relationship, and while you may not want nor need sex, just make sure that you're not shaming someone who does. Just as you wouldn't want someone to shame you for being ace, don't shame someone for having sexual needs and desires. It's really easy, and I know this on a personal level, I'm definitely guilty of this. It's really easy when you don't feel sexual attraction to kind of glaze over it. And I definitely have made that mistake before. Everyone's got their own style, and as long as we're all respectful, there's no need to put down anyone else's sexuality and ways that they show intimacy. So I hope that this helps others just kind of have a smoother entry or just a smoother journey. And I want to remind y'all that I'm right there beside you. We're holding hands. We're going into this together. We're walking off into the sunset with iced coffees and shit. We're walking up to this clubhouse. How I imagine this kind of podcast is it's literally a clubhouse in the clouds, kind of Howl's Moving Castle type of vibes. And you walk in and somebody hands you an iced coffee or a watermelon soda. And there's just pink bean bags all over the floor. And you just settle down, and then we all just start spilling the tea and just talking about our crushes and how in love we are and just all the love we feel and all the amazing things, our hearts are capable of. And we spill some of the tea. I want it to feel like that. And I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate you guys listening, because feeling listened to is something that is so important to me. And I think that at times it can be really rare in your life. Sometimes the only time I feel listened to is when I'm talking to my friends, and so just having people listen to this, listen and respond, just makes me feel so fulfilled. When you guys leave comments about what I talked about, I'm holy shit, people are actually listening to me talk, because I could talk about asexuality and all this forever, genuinely. So I just want to say how much it warms my heart that you guys actually listen. You don't even know what it does for you when you don't feel listened to in other parts of your life. It makes me feel so good. So thank you guys for giving me that. I hope that I can give you, heads up on what to expect and how to navigate with unsavory experiences and just make your experience as best as it can possibly be. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be back next week with episode 5. Until then, I love y'all and peace out.